What branch/branches did you serve in the military?
I served in the Air Force and the Navy. I went in the Air Force in August of 1971, and I went in the Navy in 1983.
Which branch did you prefer?
Well, I just wanted to serve our country to start with, though, but I liked them both. I guess if I had to have a preference, I'd probably pick the Air Force.
What were the differences in them?
Well, for me, the difference was in the Air Force, what field you go into, you pretty much stay with that particular field. You have basically just the one job. In the Navy, there's no such thing as having just one job. You'll have 5 or 6 different things. You'll stand different watches. I was a hall technician. I done plumbing, pipe fitting, welding. I manned the fire station. So there's a number of things in the Navy.
Where were you trained?
For which service?
Both.
Well, when I was in the Air Force, I went to San Antonio, Texas, at Lackland Air Force Base. That's the only base there is for basic training for the Air Force. And the Navy had 3 different places, Great Lakes, and then down in Florida, San Diego. And so when I went through boot camp in the Navy, I went to San Diego for that.
What was training like?
The training for the Air Force when I was in is about 7 weeks long, and of course it starts out with them walking down through there at 3 o'clock in the morning, making racket on trash cans, trash lids, and you do qualifications with handguns, and at the time I'd done qualification as an M16. And then also you had to run the mile and a half in a certain amount of time, and you just had to pass different qualifications. And the Air Force or the Navy was similar. The only difference was since you do more than one job in the Navy, I had to go through firefighting school, which include being in a room flooded with water. You had to know how the pipes and everything burst on Navy ship. You had to know how to take care of it. It is a lot different than the Air Force.
You got any specific stories from training that you'd like to share?
Well, for the Air Force, I mean, after I went through boot camp, I went to Biloxi, Mississippi at Keesler Air Force Base for my training and for my specific field. And after that, I got to come home on leave, and then they sent me to my permanent station then. And in the Navy, of course, since I was there in San Diego, the Marine base was right there pretty much beside where I took training at. So there's a lot going on there. And of course in the Navy, I mean, with the training being so different, you have to spend so much time in the water and be able to keep your head above water. They teach you how to survive. Like if you had to abandon ship, they just teach you how to survive it.
Where were you stationed for the Air Force?
Well, in the Air Force, I was there at Lackland for a while, and of course I just went to Keesler in Biloxi, Mississippi, just for my training. And my last station, I had orders a couple times to go to Vietnam, and they changed and sent me elsewhere at the last minute. It just happened that quick, and that's the way it happens. I mean, what field you're in, regardless of what it is, if they need you somewhere, it happens that quick. And so my last duty station was actually Chanute, which was over above Champaign-Urbana in Illinois.
What was your job specifically in the Air Force to do?
In the Air Force, I worked for a major, and then I was an administrative specialist, which I was in an ATC base, which is a base to where it's like a schooling base. I mean, people going through schooling for different fields, what areas they're going into. They went to, we taught like 7 different courses. And at the time, that's what the Air Force needed at the time. I thought I was going to be going into a different field, and just out of the blue said, this is what we need, so this is what you're going to do. And of course, you know, everything is, they try to give you what you want. I mean, if at all possible, but if they're low in a certain field, and as long as your test scores are where they need to be, that's where they're going to put you.
Where'd you want to go?
Well, where I wanted to go, I pretty much went when I was in the Navy. I mean, when I was in the Navy, of course, my home port was there on 32nd Street in San Diego. And then we'd go to Westpac every year, which is basically where you have a number of ships traveling together doing different maneuvers. You're out doing maneuvers the whole time and training. And of course, the ship I was on was 2.5 lengths of football field. It was an LST, and the Navy considered that a canoe. That's a small ship, because everything else is so much bigger. But you know, and you go to look at, well, 2.5 lengths of football field, and to me that's pretty good size, but not to the Navy it's not. But anyhow, when we done maneuvers on the Westpac, our first stop would be in Hawaii, and then we'd do maneuvers again, and we'd end up in the Philippines, we was in Hong Kong, we was in Indonesia, we was in Bunbury, Australia. So we passed the equator, and the Westpac would last roughly 180 days. And out of the 180 days, we only saw land 45 days. And we hit some pretty rough water, and of course the ship I was on happened to be flat bottom because we transported Marines and their Amtracs and equipment, and which we could be out in the middle of the ocean, and then you see the Amtracs just driving off the back of the ship into the water, and so it was quite the experience.
Can you describe a few of the places you went?
Well, Bunbury, Australia, I really enjoyed that. The people were friendly. One of the first things I learned that different parts of the world, how you will word a sentence can mean just the opposite somewhere else. So you have to be careful of how you word things, and it's pretty different everywhere. But I loved Australia. It was beautiful, people friendly, and of course the Philippines was an eye opener. I've seen a lot of things that pretty much shocked me. But and then same way with Indonesia, and I enjoyed Hong Kong, and I didn't get to see too much of Hawaii. We was right there by Waikiki Beach, but there's so many people, being the tourist trap, or so many people on the beach, you couldn't see the beach. And but I saw some of the most beautiful sunsets and sunrises, and of course, in the service, you know, when you're going through boot camp, it's to teach you discipline and teamwork, and to make sure you can follow orders, I mean, because it's a team effort on everything, it's not an individual thing, you're working, I mean, your life depends on people around you and vice versa. So you need to be able to work together as a team, and of course everything goes through a chain of command. You have to start at the bottom. If there's a problem of any kind or anything, you start at the bottom and go up. You don't jump chain of command. You can't just go to the highest person with a problem. You go to the one above you in your area, and it just goes up chain of command from there. If you don't follow that chain of command, you can get in some pretty good trouble.
Where's like your favorite place that you was at?
My favorite place was Australia. It had to be. I mean, I just loved Australia. You pass the equator and you see these atlas books to where you look in it and the water's so blue, and you think to yourself, because over here you'll see that kind of blue, and it's the most beautiful blue I've ever seen once you pass the equator. So Australia I really enjoyed, and I did get to see Adak, Alaska for a few days too, and I loved Alaska. But Australia and Alaska is my two favorite. And I mean, you go to Hong Kong, and everything is so built up around Hong Kong, and of course you go to Subic Bay in the Philippines. Things are a little bit smaller. It wasn't Manila in the Philippines; it was Subic Bay, and it was quite different. I mean, just the way people had to live and survive on a daily basis. And I've just seen so much as an eye opener, and it definitely makes you appreciate home a lot more. So, but yeah, definitely Alaska and Australia, my favorites.
What were you doing in Alaska?
Well, in Alaska, we basically pulled in port for like 3 days to take on some extra supplies and things. And after we'd done that, we had like 2 days to where we could still do, as long as we wasn't on duty that day, we was able to do a little bit of sightseeing, because you had in the Navy, you have a duty section that normally our hours anyhow was like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the evening, pretty much 5 days a week. But then we had a duty section is 4 duty sections. I mean, which is usually after 4:30, whatever duty section is for that day, they take care of it the next night, and then the following duty section takes care of it the day after that, and then so on, and it rotates. And since we just had four duty section, it means like every 5th day we had duty again. So after 4:30, we had to stay and take care of all the maintenance and stand the different watches. And like I said, in the Navy, I did firefighting, I did welding, I did plumbing, did pipe fitting. We done so many different things, and we was always going to school for something, because everything changed a lot. So when you get done going to class or to school for a certain thing, and then you're going for another. just to keep you updated on the changes and the equipment you'd be working with.
What did you do in Australia?
Well, when we was in port in Australia, we would still work just our regular day, and then 4:30, as long as you wasn't on the duty section for that day. After 4:30, you'd get liberty, and then you can go out and visit the town, the country, as long as you was there to go to work. 7:30 the next morning, you was good. And so if you met anybody that could show you the different parts, I've got pictures to where we were out in part of the outback to where you're up close to a kangaroo, really close, and just like, I've seen specials on TV, 7 of the 10 deadliest snakes in the world, their habitat is Australia. And so you need to be aware, but it was great though, and it was so pretty over there, and the people were just so friendly, and it was just a breath of fresh air.
Do you have any specific stories from when you were serving in the Navy?
Well, for somebody that is crossing the equator for the very first time, you had like a little initiation thing, and so crossing for the first time, there was so many different things that first timers had to do. Some of it is like dressing up and getting painted up, dressing like some of them might be dressed like women wearing the wigs and have all kinds of writing on them, and there might be paddles, it's just an initiation for crossing the equator for the first time. Now, once you've been past the equator the first time, you don't go through any of that, but that's just for the first timers. And it's a little initiation thing, lasts a few hours, and that was an eye opener also. But it was great. The bunks in my living quarters was only 3 bunks high, and when they tell you to secure for rough seas, you better have things tied down, including yourself, because there's been a lot of people tossed out of their beds in the middle of the night because it gets that rough. And then I stood a sounding and security watch also, which you have ballast tanks, you have bilges and ballast tanks depending on the load that ship is carrying to keep you balanced out and afloat right. And I'd have to report to the officer's deck every hour. We'd have to log it and report it, because we'd have to go through the whole ship and make sure what valves are supposed to be closed are closed, which one's supposed to be open are open, and to keep track of how much water is in that ballast tank, because if somebody accidentally left one open that should be closed, you could sink the ship. And so we had to log that every hour, which is all over the ship. A Navy ship is an electrician and a plumber's nightmare. There is miles and miles and miles of plumbing and wiring on a Navy ship, and you have to be aware at all times. You can't let your guard down, because when you're out in the middle of the ocean, and God only knows how far away from land, it could be thousands of miles, or it just depends on where you're at in the ocean. And the ocean could be what anywhere from 1 to 7 or 8 miles deep. And you know, I stayed in the water for a while, but you get out there and nothing else is around, you know, it can get a little scary.
You said you had to transport Marines, I think. So what was that like?
Well, that was an experience too. Most of them were pretty good. I mean, they're there to do the job too, you know. But on the ship I was on, the Navy personnel had their regular duties each day. And the Marines during that time, now unless they was in an Amtrak driving off the back of the boat into the water to do maneuvers, they did that. But when they wasn't doing that, they exercised every day, they polished their boots every day, they cleaned their guns every day, and there'd be a lot of times that they'd lay in the passageways to where we're trying to get through to do our jobs, and most of them would try to get out of their way, but there's a lot of them just for honoring us wouldn't try to get out of the way, and we went to our chief a lot of times and explained the situation, and he took care of it. I mean, in the Navy, your chief petty officers are pretty much run everything. They've been in for a number of years, and so they know the ins and outs and what's going on. So if we had any complaints, we go to our first class. Our first class will go to our chief, and the chief will go to the ship's captain if we had any problems. And there's been a few times that with just a handful of the Marines that a problem arose, and since one of our duties was do plumbing and pipe fitting too, which also means if something gets messed up in the latrines or bathrooms, which is totally different than anything out here in civilian life, because it's a latrine on a Navy ship is a lot different, and so we'd have to take care of that. There's been a few of them that would, on purpose, just plug things up. And of course, we had DC plugs, which was a wooden plug. It looked like a large Hershey Kiss. It was shaped like that. And you'd have to take different boots off the back of the plumbing and piping and everything, and take your DC plugs and put rags around them and hit them in there, and then you'd get the fire hose out, and you'd have the fire main that you have to open all the right valves and try to blow it out backwards when you're out in the middle of the ocean to just blow it all, you know, just out into the ocean. And there's times that where they had it so plugged up, sometimes that didn't work, and that's when it get really messy. So after a few times, especially this one area where the Marines wanted to do, a few of the Marines wanted to do it, and they just keep doing it on purpose, and because they knew we had to take care of it. Well, we complained to our first class, which was the head of our shop, is welding shop and a number of things in there. And he went to the chief, and he told the chief said, well, next time they do it, we just won't go down and take care of it. And after about 3 days of not going down there taking care of it, this was in the Marines department in their latrine, and after about 3 days, it got a little bit rank, and so the Marines captain went to the ship's captain and complained about that. Well, our chief stood up for us, and he explained what was going on. And so the Marine captain promised our ship captain that that would never happen again if we go down and take care of it one last time. So we went down and took care of it one last time, and it never happened again. So that was pretty bad.
Any other crazy experiences while you were at sea?
Yeah, there's been a few times that there'd be a few times there was some bilge wine, like down in the engine room, somebody be making some wine illegally, because they're not supposed to be doing that. And wee hours in the morning when everybody's asleep, except for the ones that's up for the certain watches, got woke up, somebody drank some of that bilge wine, and they was feeling their Wheaties, and they was running up and down making noise, waking everybody up. And so there's a lot of people got in trouble there. And but that didn't happen real often, but it did happen.
Small things that you can't.
Yeah, it happened a lot, but it got taken care of, so it didn't happen anymore after a couple times where somebody got, cause you get in some serious trouble and not to mention lose some rank. Saying you lose rank, you lose money, and not too many people wanted to do that, so there wasn't a lot of it going on, but there was some.
Did you ever have any kind of run-ins with other ships or like enemy ships?
Well, there was one time that we was underway, and for the fellas that were married, the only thing they could tell their spouses that we was going to be gone for like 90 days. Nobody on the ship, except for probably a few officers. I mean, but even before we headed out, they wouldn't let anybody know where we was going. I mean, none of us knew. We had to wait until we was on the ship. We was probably 7 or 8 miles out in the ocean before they told us where we was going. And we ended up a little bit closer to Russia than what we wanted to, or than what we should have been. And we got escorted out with planes flying overhead and boats surrounding us, and of course, you know, their guns are manned. We didn't have anything, it's just us, and of course we didn't have any Marines on board or anything like that at the time anyhow, so I was trying to remember exactly how far from shore to where it is to where you're legally in their waters. And evidently we were a little bit closer to what we should have been. And so it wasn't long in leaving.
Did you ever consider another branch of the military?
Well, I had a grandfather has served in the Marine Corps, so and I just wanted to serve our country to start with. I mean, having family that's already served. I mean, served in World War II in the Marine Corps. I had a grandfather that was Army infantry in World War II, and he was killed in France. And so since I wanted to serve, and I kind of promised Mom I wouldn't go in the Marines or Army, either one. So I went in the Air Force, and then after being in the Air Force, and everything was pretty much where I was based, was everything was stateside. Because I mean, I did have orders for Vietnam, and the last order I had for that, I was supposed to ship out to go to Vietnam the following morning, and it changed overnight. And so I was pretty much stateside for when I was in the Air Force, and when I was in the Navy, that totally changed over, because very seldom did I see California at all, which was my home port, because I saw more overseas when I was in the Navy. And it gives you a lot to think about, though. I mean, the experience and the people I've met and even worked with on the ship. You know, I'm become really good friends with a lot of them. I grew as a person and learned a lot, and I'd do it over again.
Did you know anyone who was sent to Vietnam?
I know a few people that was sent to Vietnam. One of my friends, he operated a helicopter, and he went in to rescue the wounded, and he was shot down, and he's in a rice paddy, and him and the other person on board the helicopter, both of them survived the crash, but it was real muddy and soft, and he got pinned underneath the helicopter, and the only thing that was sticking up above the mud pretty much was his nose and his eyes, and the other guy that was with him went to try to get help, and while he was gone, the Vietnamese comes swarming around where the helicopter crashed, and luckily they didn't see him because he was covered with mud, and he lay very still. So that was one incident, and there was a friend of mine that was a Navy SEAL, and he didn't talk about a lot of what he actually did because, I mean, first of all, because the missions were secret, and some of the things that when you're in, like if you're a Navy SEAL or Green Beret or whatever you might be, I mean, some of the things that those people have to do, you'd have a hard time sleeping. And so I've had several friends in Vietnam and just in combat situations period, to where some of them's had really rough time adjusting. The ones that did make it home, they had a hard time getting readjusted to civilian life once they got out. And of course, you know, I mean, they're involved with the VA, and the VA offers hotlines and help. But then some of it's easier said than done, but it changes you.
Are there any other stories you'd like to share from when you were serving?
Well, I have a few stories, but some of them can't be told. when now when you go to like Australia, now you get over to Australia, they drive on the opposite side of the road than what we do. So you think that would be easy to do. I mean, go there, it'll be easy driving the wrong side of the road, because over there it'd be actually the right side to do it on, you know. And after a while, you're driving the way you're supposed to be, and then you think, well, hey, I'm on the wrong side of the road, and then you swerve over on the right side, then you're on the wrong side of the road. So, you know, each place you would visit, whether it be Hong Kong, Australia, Indonesia, Philippines, everything is just totally different from one another. Now, when I was in the Philippines, they'd have different things. It's kind of like a street market in a way, because a lot of things were just open. All the buildings were opened up to the sidewalk, and that's the first time I've seen like monkey on a stick. I mean, it's like barbecued monkey on a stick. They had a thing called balut, which was like in a big pickle jar, but it looked like a bird without feathers. And of course, there's no way I was going to be able to eat that. And so some of the dishes, depending on what country you're in, some things I could try, and then I get them down, they'd stay down, and there's some things I thought, oh, there's no way. I mean, well, it definitely come up faster when it went down if I was able to get it down. But and then also when I was in Subic Bay in the Philippines, it's the first time I've seen where, of course, the Philippines, there at Subic Bay, you know, they dealt in pesos, and so we can exchange our American currency in for pesos. And there was a young Filipino boy that stole a sailor's billfold, and the Filipino police was shooting at this kid. And you know, and it's the first time I've experienced that, because I mean, it was a young kid to start with. And in Subic Bay, where the ships were docked, you had to cross a river, and they pretty much just named it Shit River, because in Subic Bay, in that town, all the septic system, everything just dumped into that river. So they just call it Shit River because of everything dumping into it. And then, like on Sundays, you cross this bridge over the river, going into the little town, and there'd be young ladies dressed up in nice Sunday church attire, look real nice, and they'd have a young boy with them, and I can't remember what they called it wasn't a canoe, but it looked like a canoe with outriggers to it and everything, and they'd be all dressed up in their Sunday dresses and everything, looking really pretty. Have a young boy just in shorts and that, and they'd have a basket to where you could toss pesos and they'd catch it in a basket. And if they didn't catch it in the basket, the boys would dive in to get the pesos. And it was poor enough to where if you was fairly well to do if you lived in a place that had a fan and just a black and white TV, you was doing pretty good. It's quite an eye opener though to go to different places and see how people from the different countries and walks of life and what they have to do to survive. I mean, there's some like in Hong Kong, you know, it's upper scale, so it's nothing like Subic Bay. And Subic Bay is people were struggling to survive. I mean, just to pay for rent and their normal bills and put food on the table. And you know, it makes you think a lot, and a lot of it's really pretty sad. And you know, my heart goes out to them, you know. But it's been you know, I've been blessed, and it's been a good experience, and I would not hesitate at all to do it all over again. You know, first of all, I wanted to serve our country, and because, believe me, a lot of people take things for granted here. They think they automatically should get this or that or whatever, and a lot of people have no idea that it wasn't for our men and women in the service, things will not be like this for them, you know, they wouldn't be able to do the things they do. A lot of them don't remember that, or even think of it, but that's the way it is, I mean, hey, freedom's not free. And, so it gives you a lot to think about.
Alright, well, thanks. I think that's about all the questions I have.
He had a good friend that passed